Okay,
And
I see it's recording. All right, thank you. Welcome, everybody. It's 9:02. This is the April 4th meeting of the Weston Board of Education Policy Committee. We have a quorum, so I'll call the meeting to order. Let's look at our first agenda item, which I think is to approve the minutes from our last meeting. Did anybody take a look at them? I read through them.
I read through them as well.
Okay, I did not have any changes. Does anyone have any changes?
Nope.
Okay, so let's have a motion. I'm sorry?
No, I'm good.
Okay, great. Let's have a motion to approve the minutes from the March 7th, 2023 policy meeting.
I so move to approve the minutes from March.
Okay, all right, thanks, Sharon. Thank you, Steve, for the second. Everyone in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. Me too. That motion passes. Those minutes are approved. I see we have some guests with us today. We have Tracy and Mark. Do we want to go, Lisa, in the order of the agenda, which would be suicide prevention followed by advertising and promotion, or do people have time constraints we need to change?
I would ask the people in the meeting. Mark, Tracy, do you have time constraints?
I'm good.
I'm good.
Okay, so then let's go in order, which would be first the discussion of policy 5141.5, which is suicide prevention.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. I'm happy to step through a general overview of this policy and related regulations. Obviously, this is a very heavy and serious topic. The purpose for revisiting this policy is ours was very outdated, and there have been a number of changes to kind of recommended language. I think the policy itself is self-explanatory, although I'd be happy to answer any questions that people might have. Obviously, it's our job as a school or as a school district. We recognize the complexity of this issue. We are not a mental health treatment center. At the same time, when we become aware of students who are potentially in crisis, it's our obligation to be responsive to that information and to help connect that student with whatever level of support is warranted in that particular instance. There's a need to provide some training to staff around that. I have had conversations with our mental health teams in all of the buildings this year around the protocols. So separate from the policy and the regulation, what are the protocols that we follow and our responsibilities if we hear or know of a student who is potentially at risk for engaging in suicide. The regulation, let me pause there. Are there any questions about the policy?
Yeah, I just had a couple off the top before we get into kind of the nuts and bolts of it. This was a policy that already existed and we're updating it, or is this the first time that we have a suicide prevention policy?
It existed. It was last updated, I think, in 1990. So it was
1990. Okay. And do we know what other districts are doing with respect to a suicide prevention and intervention policy? It just seems like, obviously it's an incredibly important issue. And when you think about it, I mean, you could go in so many different directions in terms of what to do as a district, education, prevention, what are we doing with respect to the students, the teachers, staff, the policy could go in many different directions. How do we feel about this policy compared to what other districts are doing, or did we take an opportunity to look at other districts? Do we feel like this is appropriately specific?
That's a great question. So yes, I did look at some policies from surrounding districts. I will say that this is a policy, and perhaps not surprisingly, that looks very different in different districts. Meaning, if we look up a policy on some other more benign issue, you go on each of the websites and it's like everyone took the boilerplate template and just ran with it. That's really not the case here. And I had a pretty extensive conversation about this policy just to make sure that it aligns with what we're required to do and also the process that we're following and what we feel comfortable with as a district. So I can't say that I found like a common, oh, everybody's doing this in this specific way.
Okay.
I have a quick question. In both of the risk categories, both moderate and high risk, number 5 under letter B is the student's access to ongoing counseling within the school. The beginning of the whole policy starts off with the school is not a mental health facility, clearly. And so I'm just curious as to what that line refers to, ongoing counseling within the school. So yeah, if you could.
Sure. Yeah, I didn't even get, you're on the regulation. I didn't even get there yet, but that's a great question. And I realized that one of these isn't numbered correctly. It actually should be item 6. But
Yes.
so the rationale behind that particular line item, and if you notice, it's about access. Obviously, there needs to be conversations with families. But if we have a student, basically there's a risk assessment that we go through. It's a standard protocol. It's not something that was developed within Weston. It's something that's used much more broadly. And there's, credibility behind that assessment. When we have a student who flags on that, that's a red flag for us. You're right. We're not a mental health facility, but from my perspective, it's unlikely that someone at that level of concern isn't having any sort of impact on their school performance. So we want to make sure that in addition to connecting them to outside resources and supports, we're also making ourselves available to the student and his or her family to navigate through both that immediate situation and what follows. I mean, these are, when we have a student go through a risk assessment, this is a weighty conversation. It's a complex conversation. And the rationale behind that is that it's not kind of a one and done, right? We're making contact with that student. Sometimes it is around a bad event or day, and the check-ins demonstrate that, okay, like we've provided some immediate support and we're moving on a better path. Other times, this is a first kind of warning sign and indicator that we need to be doing something more for that student. No one's suggesting that that's happening in isolation, but it's something that maybe wasn't happening prior to the risk assessment that landed us in this category.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we don't find ourselves in a position in which the families assume that we are providing all of these counseling, services. I want to make sure that they know that the counseling services that we're providing are not the counseling services alone that the child needs, right? I don't want to put ourselves in a position where we're on the hook because our counseling services didn't help. God forbid some child actually does go through with, the suicidal act. And, I want to make sure that this line that says access to ongoing counseling within the school isn't something that the parents think is covering what needs to be covered with the child. You know what I mean? Does that make sense at all?
It does. That's good feedback. I can certainly think about that. And maybe there's a way to frame that a little bit differently to capture the concern that you're getting at. Obviously, we have a couple of more reads of this, so there's an opportunity to make some further revision.
Yeah, maybe something about students' access to regular check-ins with the counseling department to ensure the school process is going smoothly or something along those lines. I don't know. Something to think about.
Well, we can't be the primary counseling.
No, not at all.
I mean that's essentially what you're saying. That if the child needs counseling, we can't be that primary source of counseling.
Correct.
I think, Sharon, you you hit on a key component of it. And again, I can adjust the wording, counseling that supports access to the school process, which
Yeah.
is distinct from counseling that is more therapeutic in nature.
Right. I just don't want to find ourselves in a situation where a parent reads this and says, my kid was getting counseling in school. I don't know why I needed to do outside counseling.
Well,
I
we
don't
do
want-
have item number 4, which is the referral to
Right.
appropriate professional services outside the school system.
Correct. And I see that, but I want to make sure that they're not confused by the following one that says, oh, they're
Yes.
getting counseling in school. I just want to make sure that that's clarified a little bit.
Okay.
Got it. Thank you.
Sorry for jumping ahead too, Tracy.
No, that's okay.
Tracy, I was wondering too, when, to me, when we're talking about classifying somebody as either moderate or high risk, how is that determination made? Or is our staff going through training? Is that training something we're developing in Weston? Is that something that's developed on the state level? How do we make the determination whether someone's moderate or high risk?
There's a very concrete risk assessment that we use that basically we ask students very specific questions, and how they respond is scored, and that score determines if they are moderate or high risk. It's not subjective. It's not like they just say, oh, I've engaged in this conversation and I think they're at moderate risk based on what they talked about. There's very specific criteria to fall in each of these categories. And again, the instrument that we're using is not something that's just used in Weston. It is a risk assessment that is used. There's some, I don't know if research is the right word, but there is some validity behind that. It's been developed by another organization. And again, it's used much more broadly. I don't want us to be using any internally developed documents for exactly the reason that you're kind of getting to. I want something that has some credibility and weight behind it.
Right.
The only other, thought I had in this relates to Roman 3 subset A for moderate risk, and then similarly Roman 4 subset B for high risk, which is the notification of parents. I think we should be more specific in exactly what we're going to do to notify parents, because under A it says, shall notify the student's parent guardian the same day or otherwise as soon as possible. I would prefer to see something like, shall notify the student's parent guardian the same day by calling each of the contacts in the PowerSchool database, or, whatever we have, so that we can say we've done this. Because it's not our responsibility if people are unavailable and don't answer the phone. But on the same note, this isn't the type of situation where we can just be leaving voicemails and hoping for the best. So I think we want to be specific in what is a reasonable effort that we can make to reach out to parents. And I don't know what that is. It's either calling everybody on the parent school list for A, and then maybe for Roman 4B, when we're talking about the high risk, maybe it's calling every number on the PowerSchool notification list every 30 minutes, or every, whatever we think as a district is reasonable. I can't speak to that, but I think we need to have some kind of, we have to have some way of making it clear that if we are just getting voicemails, that we're not just stopping there.
Sure. I can tell you that we do that. I can figure out a way to kind of memorialize that in this regulation so that it's more clear to the reader of the regulation that those efforts, especially in Roman numeral 4, are ongoing and repeated.
Can I make a suggestion on that? Melissa, I know you're a lawyer and I respect where you're coming from, but at the same time, the reason why someone's going to be reading this policy is if they've got a problem, if they're trying to find a solution to their problem. And I think the more specific we get, the more they may hold our feet to the fire and say, I'm sorry, but they didn't call every half an hour. They called every 45 minutes. And I don't want to find ourselves in a situation like that. I don't necessarily know if we need to tighten, if we need to make it so specific that it could actually work against us, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point on the timing, but I think when you have language like, shall notify the student's parent guardian the same day or otherwise as soon as possible, I don't think that's
Okay.
specific enough.
All right, that's fair.
Yeah, I was not
So-
planning to put the time interval. I agree. But at the same time, I hear your point that to the reader, it could sound like, well, we, made one attempt and we
Yeah.
called it a day. So
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Let's just think about what's the most practical and what we can do that's not, that's reasonable, I think is fine.
Yep.
Let's see if I had any other questions. That's all I had. I don't know if anybody else has any other comments.
I had one other question. I read through, but I don't recall seeing anywhere in particular. I know it said that the students are trained on suicide awareness in their health classes and staff members are trained, but did it say anywhere in here how frequently or when the training takes place for staff, if it's every year during professional development or
Annually.
Is it annual? Did it say in there? Okay.
yeah, which will be different than how this has been handled in the past, but this is something that we need to do moving forward.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
I will just say I got some feedback from the high school administrators after I needed to post this about the wording around the student education. So it is highly likely that you're going to see, if I can do this, in addition to the revisions that we're talking about today, some changes in wording for that before it goes to the Board of Education as well.
Okay.
Okay.
There was some concern about the level of specificity, and some of those items may or may not be developmentally appropriate at certain ages. And so we just want
Oh.
to set an expectation for how, a more broad expectation for how and when that happens.
Okay. Great. And as part of that training, do students know who to go to if they see, something that concerns them about a classmate? And is it clear to them that they would go to the guidance counselor, or they would go to the SRO, or they would go to the principal?
What's wrong?
That can certainly be part of this. I can tell you that we have had students who have appropriately advocated for their peers. And yes, they have demonstrated that they know the appropriate resources for help. A lot of it is around relationships and comfort. And so even if the social worker or the psychologist or the counselor is the more natural person, sometimes students are going to go to their teacher because there's an established relationship there. And, I think it behooves us to continue to encourage students to go to any adult anytime there is a situation where they are worried about a peer.
No, I think that's important. I'm glad to hear that's part of the training.
Yeah.
And then my last thought, knowing this policy was coming up, I was just, reading through the news and trying to, try to understand this. I don't want to say epidemic, but this problem that you're hearing about even post-COVID, such seems like such higher number of suicide among high school and middle school age students. Do we patrol the bathrooms, the spaces in our school? Do we check in periodically to make sure that people are safe?
I would say we do the very best we possibly can as people walk the schools. Security guards do rounds, administrators do rounds. That's all part of the the safety protocols of the daily operations of a building, right, Mr. Berkowitz?
Yes, that is accurate. There are people, teachers who are near bathrooms that frequently just stop in to use that bathroom just to make sure they're seen in there. We do the same thing when
Yeah.
there are classrooms around. So I don't know that there's any schedule where we say, every 30 minutes we have to make sure someone's in a bathroom. But it is done, I would think,
Okay.
relatively frequently.
Yeah, no, I just saw that awful case in New Jersey with the young girl.
In the bathroom at
It
school?
was in the school bathroom, yeah,
Oh,
in New
horrible.
Jersey.
Well,
Yeah.
and there are scheduled rounds that the security guards make. It's not necessarily dibbed as a bathroom round, but there are scheduled rounds throughout the day that the security guards go around to check the outside doors. And I've seen them as they walk by certain areas, they're looking in. There's certain bathrooms, for example, at the intermediate school, some of them are actually propped open a little bit where they can be, because there's a privacy issue. Same thing at home, but you can kind of look in to see what's going on.
Okay. Yep, just be as vigilant as we can be.
Yes, it's very important.
All right, well, I think that's all I have on my end. Does anyone have any other comments on this policy?
No more for me.
Okay, Tracy, then I
no-
leave it to you. Oh, Steve, I forgot about you. I'm sorry.
Most people do. Thank you. No, none.
Okay, terrific. Tracy, I leave it to you if you want to bring this back to the policy committee, or if you feel that these changes are minor enough, you want to just bring it to the board. If there's a sense of urgency of getting this done by year end, I can work with you offline to finalize it, however you'd like to proceed.
Yeah, I think there is some urgency here. And I do think that these are, in the grand scheme of things, relatively minor adjustments. I will get the adjustments as soon as possible. And then I think if we can just move it forward, that would be beneficial.
Okay, terrific.
should
Let's
we-
do that.
First read on the 18th then?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Terrific. All right. Well, thanks very much, Tracy. I appreciate you bringing this forward. This is something that we've all been thinking a lot about lately, and it's a great opportunity to update something important like this. So thank you for that.
Yes. Do you need me for the remainder of the meeting? I'm happy to.
No, we do not.
Okay.
You're always welcome to stay, but we'll let you go.
Thank you all.
Okay. Thanks. Bye. All right. Moving on to 1325, advertising and promotion. Mr. Berkowitz, we have discussed this a lot, and I think we can get this going forward to the board meeting next. So let's take a look. I've seen what changes we made. I had a few comments, but I think they would fall under the category of minor. Let me pull it up. Bear with me 1 second. Page 1 is great. Page 2, where we distinguish the different clubs. First of all, who's controlling the red line for this? Is this Jody or Mark? Jody?
It
Is
is
she
me. I have no idea why it keeps printing that column on the right-hand side.
Which column? I didn't even see that.
Oh, on mine, I see this big gray column on the right.
Oh, that's just because you're in.
Yeah, I couldn't make it go away when I was printing it.
Once you mark it final and turn off the
Yeah, it'll go off at
track,
that
it'll
point.
go away. It's just that the language we want to use is right of first refusal instead of first right of refusal.
Okay.
So if we can just change that consistently for all of those bullet points, it's the Gridiron Club has the right of first refusal.
Got it.
Same for the Booster Club, the Diamond Club, the Softball Club. And then I just wanted to check with you, Mark, the way this reads now, and this may be fine, but it wasn't quite my recollection, is that, each of these clubs controls the banners and the fields for their seasonal sport, let's say, and can sell their banners among their club. After that, any other requests are coming to you. Is that the way you wanted it, or did you want those clubs to manage any requests from like the outside youth sports organizations, like the Weston Lacrosses, the Weston Soccer Clubs, those types of things?
Yeah, I think that it should come through this office first,
Okay.
just because the leaders of those clubs can change frequently, and that could get lost in translation. This
Okay.
way it comes to the athletic office. I would then say, if the lacrosse club came to me, I would say, yes, you need to put a formal request in with Tammy Roberts, who's the head of the booster club. But when
Okay.
Tammy leaves, I would, give it to the next person. I just think that makes it cleaner and easier to make sure it's continually happening.
Okay, that sounds perfect. So I think we've got this where we need it to be. I think it makes a lot of sense. Hopefully it works for these youth sports organization. It works for our booster clubs and all of our teams. It's not too administratively burdensome for you, Mark, I hope. So I don't have anything further other than that, the right of first refusal change that Jody will make. Does anyone have any other comments on this?
I thought it looked good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
I'm sorry, is this a first read? I can't remember.
No,
It will go for the first read in April if
Okay.
we're okay with this.
Yeah, so Mark, you need to be there for the first read.
Okay.
If you could, on Tuesday, April 18th, in case there's any questions, if you could possibly be there if you don't have a conflict. We can talk later. It's just, I think it's helpful.
yeah.
Okay, and we'll try to put you on early, Mark.
Just
Yeah,
have
that would,
allegiance.
actually it might be better if like middle early, because we have a home lacrosse game. So I'll have to announce starting lineups and do all that stuff at 6. The game starts at 6.
Oh,
And then I can
Figure
come
it
in.
out.
Then
All
I
right,
can
good.
come
That'll
in.
be fine. We have
Thank you.
school security on the agenda. We'll be fine.
yes.
Okay. I think this is great though. I know you spent a lot of time on it and a lot of thought, and I think this will move smoothly for many future years. Any other comments, or can we move it to the April board meeting for first read?
I say move it.
All right.
Good, that's fine.
Okay. Terrific. Great. Thanks very much, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thank you all. I think this will clean things up and make it a lot easier, and does allow for some of the things that were kind of falling through the cracks and happening anyway.
Yeah.
I was for it. So I think it's a great move. Thank you. Appreciate
Awesome.
it.
Okay. Terrific.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
Have a good day.
Thanks, you too. Bye.
Bye-bye. Oh, Melissa, we forgot to ask if it's going to be possible for the sailing club to have sales made up for advertising.
The non-Weston Sailing Club. Yeah, non-Weston High School Sailing Club.
All right. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. Let's see. What are we doing next? Advertising, promotion, field trips, and community service.
Yes, there's just a slight tweak. I'm going to let
Yes.
Dr. Hinkle talk about this tweak. I know it already went for the first read, so we don't want it to hold it back. It's just literally a slight tweak. Go ahead, Tina.
Good morning. Hi, everybody. Sorry,
Hi.
it's late. Two minor
Tina.
adjustments to the administrative regs in the field trip policy after further detailed review with our team. Within step 2, we recognize that the athletic director, it would be a different kind of practice and policy with any of the sports events that go through Mark, and it would not be something that would be going through like a field trip request. So we just took his position out of this process. And then the last piece in step 4, or when we've made a comment or noted the student to chaperone ratio, we wanted more flexibility to ensure that depending on the age of the students and where they were going, that we had an option to make an adjustment up or down if they were older, for example, and maybe not going too far away to an overnight destination where we could, have 1 to 16 students depending on the chaperones that were attending.
Or less, because
less.
now it's 1 to 10 to 15.
Right.
But, it's very different when we're talking about taking second graders or third graders over to the Weston Historical Society, and we're taking kids to Hyde Park that are 16 years old. So the administrative team wanted a little bit of flexibility, especially given the fact that, you're pulling teachers out of school to go on these trips. And, a ratio of 1 to 10 on a Hyde Park trip with 16 and 17-year-olds, we can push it a little. We have, in fact, we haven't had it that tight, And also it's the type of, are they going by bus? You know, if they were going by train into the city, that would be a little bit different, but we want that flexibility to be able to judge the overall age of the kid, where they're going, the safety on the trip that is provided by the transportation. So just putting that piece in as a caveat helps us.
And how is it going to read again?
May be adjusted by the school administrator based on student's age and destination of the trip.
Okay.
So there is a guide, there's a guideline, right? Reviewing the chaperone to student ratio of 1 chaperone to 10 to 15 students. But depending on the documentation that we receive in the assistant superintendent's office, we have the ability to make a request to increase that number or decrease that number depending on the age and the destination of the trip.
All right.
That's for walking trips. And then you'll see that when you have the international or the overnight trips, just that same language is been added to that same bullet.
Okay.
Because, for example, if you go on an international trip and you only have 7 kids, you've got to take 2 adults. Like, yeah, 1 adult would be fine to watch 7 children, but if something happens to that adult, and things have happened, I mean, they've happened more in my Builders Beyond Borders trips, to be truthful. But if somebody is out of commission, they get sick, they end up in a hospital, who's taking care of these kids? There has to be a minimum of things like that. And without getting into every different specifics, I think that this kind of is a good addition.
I agree. Although you could specifically say it has to be a Board of Ed member on the international trips. Just throwing that out there.
I was like, what are you talking about? You go plenty of places. You're not going. I think the superintendent of schools could go. I want to go to this latest one. They're going to Venice.
I know. It looks awesome.
So that's just a minor thing.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That makes sense.
And then we're good for final review and approval.
Okay.
That should be.
So that'll be second read at the
18th.
18th. Second read. Yep. Okay. And then the first read is advertising. Okay. Perfect.
I'm sorry, I had to step away for just a second. Is there a discussion of the fundraising policy that was supposed to come up back to us this April meeting?
No.
It's okay, Melissa.
We needed
I'm
some
so
more
sorry, the
specific-
dog is losing its mind. I'm trying my
We
best.
needed, Jody, what was the status? You needed Mr. DeVito to clean.
We
some
need to
up?
get more specific information on which online policies, which online platforms would be best to use for crowdsourcing. And Mr. DeVito is going to help get some of that information. He was involved with that in his former position. So
Okay.
he was going to forward us some information on that, and then we have to vet that to see which would be the best online platform.
Yeah.
Okay, so will that come back to us?
That will come back, yes.
Okay.
Okay, and then I lost you at the tail end of the field trip. Those changes with respect to the adding the discretion with respect to the student-teacher ratio will be coming to the second read, correct?
Second read,
Good.
exactly.
And the removal.
Also,
of
just-
the corrector.
Just to get back to that policy on the field trips, the paragraph, page 12 on the 3rd paragraph, there were 2 typos with respect to the spelling of the word provision, and the word policy was missing a Y. So let's just make sure we clean those up too for the final.
Do you see that, Jody?
Say it again.
Page 12 in the 3rd paragraph.
Jody will do it.
Okay, you have it, Jody? I don't have the numbers.
Let me pull it up for you. I've got it right here. Page
Is it in the
12.
policy or the regs?
Oh, it might be the regs. Let me look. Regs. No? Let me look.
Is it in one of the steps?
No, it's in the policy on the last page, the 3rd paragraph. So the penultimate paragraph, the second from the bottom.
Okay,
Provisions is spelled wrong, Jody. I see it.
okay,
Provisions. And then policy, board
Okay.
policy needs a Y. That's it.
Right
Okay.
there.
On the same line.
Oh, police.
Okay, got it.
Sorry. Okay, I'm done. I'm good? Can I go?
Yeah, you can go.
I think that's great.
Thanks, Tina.
That's in good shape.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. And
What
so
time-
and we have fundraising that's going to come back to the policy committee in April. Nothing to the full board yet, correct?
All right. Fundraising's coming back in May.
Fundraising is coming back to us in May and policy.
All right.
Okay, sounds good. That is the end of the policies for discussion on the agenda, other than the category we have for future discussion of policies. And I think we have received some community feedback regarding the gift policy. So because that is scheduled for a second read in April, let's take a minute and discuss those public comments, just so that we can see if any revisions need to be made to the policy.
Well, I can make a couple of comments based on, we received feedback from one of the PTO presidents at the one at the high school, Christine Harris. We appreciate her feedback. The first point that she makes is, I think, is a valid point. She talks about how, the policy was updated 17 years ago, and that due to the inflation. So she proposes that we raise it from $499 or $500 to $1,000. I think saying gifts valued under $1,000 would cover that, and I would be comfortable with that. Because it's true, it doesn't take much to get to a $500 limit.
Right.
And I should add that the numbers on this were based on the Shipman and Goodman, again, their draft policies where we can tweak a little bit as needed for our community. So I think that's a valid point. I don't know if you're comfortable with raising that to under 1,000.
Under 1,000 goes to the principal, correct?
Under 1,000 would go to approval by the superintendent or building principal. Now that "or" is important because that means that the building principal has the authority to accept something under $1,000.
Okay.
I think is fine.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, let me run you, as long as you're aware of it, Lisa.
Well, that's the other thing. And that's, I think, part of the reason why, and I did speak to the PTO presidents, why we were cleaning this up, because I think that even the existing policy that we had was not, people are very generous and they want to give to the district. However, one of the things that we have to keep in mind when we do that is there is an equity issue in the district across schools, across grade levels, across programs, to make sure that it's a school system, not a system of schools, that we're all kind of aligning and making decisions based on what we need. Looking at like mats, for example, they bought mats for mindfulness activities of the high school. I think that was even under 500. That's appropriate. It aligns again with our initiative, and I think it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think, their point regarding inflation is a good one. This hasn't been looked at since the early 2000s or mid 2000s. So if we think those dollar level amounts should be increased, I don't have any objection to that. I do hear your concerns, Lisa, on the need for things to go through the proper channels. So I think, I take their point about delay on their third point about the board approval if recurring costs. Do you feel that's appropriate, or would you rather have board approval for all significant expenditures?
Well, I think that in going down what she had put in there, she talked about level 2.
You're right.
Which are gifts valued at $500 to $2,000. So that would be 1,000, right?
Yep.
And they say to 10,000, I would not approve that at all. I am not comfortable with that.
Okay.
I think, again, it speaks to, wanting to, if you're making a purchase of almost $10,000, we really have to make sure that the purpose is appropriate. It aligns with the school's instructional goals, co-curricular goals. How many students does it, affect? All of that. And I would not be comfortable with up to $10,000. I think that now this is the level where it's approval by the superintendent and acceptance by the board. And that's an important difference. So I can say, for example, with the cart, which, by the way, I knew absolutely nothing about at any point until, they couldn't get it. Oh, there was a delay. I wasn't even kept in the loop on any of it. So again, it's to making sure that, are we in the loop? What do we need? Across this, talking to, just even having a conversation about our IT director, because a school may perceive a need, and how do we know that in the district we might not have that equipment that we could give them and it wouldn't cost anything. So what I would be comfortable at the second level is between 1,000 and, perhaps we do 1,000 to 3,000. It has to be approved by the superintendent and accepted by the board. So if there was, I think an example was about, there was some example about, that was written up about voting about, where was it mentioned?
I have the email.
Yeah, I'm reading it here. We request the change. Cost of things we receive are often around and just above the 2,000 mark.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That, if the cost could have been done, it could have been delayed. Well, if the policy had been followed, we were up on it. Oh, I know. An example of teacher workshops. They can easily cost over 2,000 and do not require additional maintenance or operating costs. It's not just about that. It's about paying for teacher workshops without looking at a K-12 professional development curriculum. And
Yeah.
that's where it's important that it goes to central office to be approved. And so if you look at level 2, it says approval by the superintendent, acceptance by the board. I know that if I said to you, this PD that we wish to provide is important, it's well articulated in a K-12 continuum, and we approve it, that's great. If it's, we like this curriculum, we want to do this PD at the middle school, it sounds great, we want to send people, we're just going to send them for $2,000. Well, wait a minute. How does it interface with the kids coming up? Does it align with our curricular and academic program? How does it interface at those transition years? We can't operate in isolation. It must be in K-12. And that's why I think we need to say, all right, from 1 to 3,000, that's fine. Anything over $3,000, I believe, needs to go before the Board of Education before being accepted.
Okay.
It just does. The limit that they are talking about here of in level 3, only gifts that require, we can't lose control of what's being purchased for the school district and how it interfaces with our goals. Because
I
some
agree.
things are nice to have, but do we need them?
Yes,
So I agree with you, Lisa.
I do too.
I want to make sure that, what we're saying basically is gifts of $1,000 or less, the principal can approve.
Mhm.
Gifts of $1,001 up to $3,000 has to be approved by Lisa and the Board of Ed, or just Lisa?
Accepted by the Board of Ed.
Accepted.
Announced
Okay.
to us, yeah.
But that's
And
important
so-
that we make sure, because otherwise, if we have, it could add a whole month into the cycle. So
Exactly.
approved by Lisa and accepted by the Board of Ed.
And so when it's accepted, like that right there is, because it doesn't require approval,
Right.
we can move ahead with this. You know what I
Yes.
mean? It's not, it provides approval and then a formal acceptance. We need to make sure that we are, accepting things and we know about it. I think that over the years, especially during COVID and right after, we got kind of like, oh yeah, they gave this, they gave that, and none of the
Yeah.
processes were followed.
Right.
And let's keep in mind, you're speaking with the board chair and vice chair weekly. Like, should something on that
Exactly.
that you want to let us know about ahead of time, or you have a question about, we can address through that mechanism as well in that level 2 phase. And then
Well-
I think I hear you for level 3.
Yeah.
to not remove that board approval. And let's think outside of this policy, if there's ways we can expedite getting it before the board so that, if the PTOs can express to the school that this item is time sensitive, or they have a price in an Amazon shopping cart that's going to be changing soon, or there's only one available item in stock, then, we can figure out a way to get that before the board more quickly. I mean, we often are having a special meeting for something else, and we could tack that on very quickly if there is something of a cost sensitive or time sensitive nature. We certainly don't want to be obstructionist to
Exactly.
these
No,
very generous
exactly.
donations.
But to your point, Melissa, I meet with you every week, you and Steve. We meet with the principals every week individually. So, there is a breakdown if we don't hear about it in a timely manner.
Yeah.
And, I have, to be perfectly frank, gotten a little frustrated when I hear about things that I never knew about at all. And then
Okay.
I don't like really being, quite frankly, the bad guy saying, wait a minute, I
Yeah.
don't think this is what we need. And to that point, in this email, there's a lot of description about the principal goes to the philanthropy chair, then it goes to the board. This has to be discussed and approved between the principal and me. I don't want anything moving forward unless I know about it, because it puts me in a very difficult position to say,
Sure.
I don't think this is the best way to spend this money.
Sure.
I don't think we need this.
Okay. All right. Well, I think you've made very sound and reasonable points. So let's incorporate what Lisa has said. I think there are a few changes in the dollar amounts that we
Sure.
can make, and then put it forward for the second read on April.
Yeah, I would be very comfortable. And just for clarification, I think in the first one, instead of going like 1,001, just say gifts valued under 1,000.
Yeah.
That's it. And then if it's 1,000 to 3,000, and then over 3,000, that's how
Yeah.
I think it's fine.
I think that works well.
Thanks for listening. I appreciate it.
No,
Thanks.
I appreciate
Thank you.
that. And Jody, when you have the gift policy with those changes done, can you send that to me? Because I want to make sure I respond to the
Yes,
parent,
absolutely.
the parent email, and I want to quote it properly. Okay, terrific. That's everything on the agenda. Anything else regarding our next scheduled meeting or upcoming policies? Anything like that? Okay, so our next meeting is
Nope.
May 2nd. Steve, did you have something? I'm sorry.
No. I was gonna say, no, there's nothing for me.
Okay.
I'm not. Unfortunately, I'm going to be in transit on May 2nd. So you're making fun of me here, Lisa, for traveling, but I will be in transit. I'm not going to be available for that meeting on the 2nd.
Okay.
But-
All right. Well, Steve and I can address.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
Jody,
Sounds good.
can you end the meeting? Melissa, I did want to talk to you and Steve for a quick second about the upcoming agenda, if you can stay on.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. All right,
Sure. You're
let's,
kicking me off is what you're saying, Lisa. Oh.
Let's
Listen.
let's have a
Thank
motion
you.
to adjourn this meeting.
I so
accomplish
move.
everything. Thank you, Sharon.
Second.
Thanks, Steve. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thanks for a very
Guys.
productive meeting. Appreciate it, everyone.
Talk to you later.
Okay.
Have
Bye.
a great day.
Give me a
You too.
moment to
Thanks,
end the
Sharon.
meeting.
Okay. All right.